Ready, go. Climate Change in the Netherlands by Linda Velasquez.
Andrea Jaramillo. The overview of our causes and effects for the Netherlands. Our cause one would be the rising of sea levels and CO2 emissions, livestock farming, and with these causes come its effects, which would be the causes of flooding, increase of health issues, and air pollution.
Background. For many centuries, the Netherlands have been flooded by surrounding waters due to climate change. About 800 years ago, councils were created in which they were tasked to prevent floods. In order to do this, the rich had to provide their money and the poor had to provide their labor in order to build structures called levees that would prevent water from flooding onto the land. These councils still exist today and still have to worry about the flooding as seawater levels continue to rise.
Causes and effects number one, the rising of sea levels. As the temperature gets warmer, ice glaciers begin to melt and the seawater begins to get warmer and expands. As the sea levels rise, the Netherlands, they are at risk of overflooding, which leads to the loss of jobs, homes, and overwatering of certain types of plant life that reside in the Netherlands. Many families in the Netherlands have moved in order to make space for the water so that it gets wider instead of higher. People had to move away as workers demolished their farms houses to create room in order to prevent future flooding.
These two pictures are showing the before and after of climate change affecting their land. The after picture is showing how sea levels have rise and have flooded their piece of land there and have damaged the trees and killed them.
Effect number two, CO2 emissions. As the CO2 emissions rise, many health problems have arise like heat stress, the spread of Lyme disease, and more of all, the air quality becoming worse, especially for those who are older and those who suffer from asthma and those who suffer from respiratory problems. Among those who are healthy and those who already suffer from issues to only get worse due to the burning of CO2 emissions.
CO2 emissions in 2018. This graph is showing the comparison between many different European countries and their usage of CO2. You can see that the Netherlands is fourth on the graph, which one can assume that it means that they're one of the countries that use CO2 the most and consume it and spread it out of all the countries in Europe.
CO2 emissions 2021. Emissions rose more sharply than the gross domestic product. Higher emissions were mainly due to the higher output of the manufacturing transcript sector. In Q2 2021, GDP was up by 9.7% year on year, meaning that during COVID, the peak of COVID, many people had been using fossil fuels and more CO2 emissions that they would usually use or burn.
Cause and effect number three, livestock farming. Cows are major emitters of methane, and methane is a very hazardous air pollutant which will affect anyone exposed to it.
Counterclaim the positive effects of climate change. Although many people may argue that there are more negative effects of climate change in many places, including the Netherlands, there has been reports of positive effects on climate change, those being the increase in agricultural productivity and the increase in tourism. Although they don't fix although there's a short amount of positives there, they don't fix all the negatives that there is. Although the hotter weather It makes tourism increase. It does not change the fact that the harming of the environment will increase the chances of the planet not existing.
Solution number one for rising sea levels would be building more and higher structures to prevent water from passing over onto the land and flooding the land in general. In the picture above, you can see how people in the Netherlands get materials to build walls along the coast in order to prevent all the water from coming onto the land.
Solution 2 for CO2 emissions. With this in mind, the Dutch government has decided that in order to reduce these numbers, they will achieve this by using any type of technology that will considerably use less CO2 by reusing raw materials, cleaner cars that will not send as much CO2 as a regular car would do.
Solution number three for livestock farming would just be reducing the amount of livestock because the Netherlands is actually one of the world's biggest agriculture exporters. So they can probably cut down on that just to reduce the amount of unnecessary methane that they're producing.
To conclude, the rising sea levels, the solution would be building more / higher dikes. For CO2 emissions would be reducing the amount of CO2 produced and burned and used. For livestock farming, reducing the methane emissions.
Thank you.
Thank you.